Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from today. We would like to welcome you to today's session of the Azure webinar series. Our topic today is Migrate your file data to Azure at no cost. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a little bit of housekeeping. We do have subject matter experts with us today who will be answering questions in real time, so please pop any questions that you might have into the Q&A window and we will get to them as quickly as we can. Also, on the top right-hand corner of your console, you will find a resources area. Any links mentioned in this session will be easily accessible for you there. Right below the resources widget, you will find a survey. Please provide any feedback that you have around today's session. Finally, this presentation is recorded and you will receive a link to view the session on demand in your email within 48 hours. We have one speaker with us today from Microsoft. Carl, handing it over to you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. I am Carl Rautenstrauch. I am a principal product manager here at Microsoft and really thrilled to be discussing this topic with you today. We're going to roll through a couple of different items on our agenda. We'll begin by discussing the Azure Storage services that are available for you to migrate your applications and data to. We'll talk about the process and our program for migrating file data. And then we're going to review some of the best practices that everyone should consider when migration is on the table. And finally, we'll wrap up with some resources that are accessible to you after this presentation that you'll be able to learn more and dive even deeper into these topics. So let's get started with the focus of our conversation today, which is file data that is experiencing explosive growth across all industries and all size customer environments. The number 175 zettabytes is absolutely massive and enormous. And for those of you who may be thinking, wow, that's a lot of SQL Server and Oracle databases, the fact is, the reality is that the bulk of that data is unstructured data that lives outside of a relational database. And what we're going to be discussing today is how to address that and move that safely and securely to Azure Cloud Storage Services. So what data makes up this population of unstructured data? Well, you see a few categories here. Modern data lakes are full of unstructured data, things like Parquet files that contain data that you need to analyze with modern analytics. Of course, if you're running virtual desktop deployments, they are rife with unstructured data, file data to help you support your business and your desktop applications. High performance compute and machine learning applications all rely on data, whether that's photos, video, audio that I'm using to train a new machine learning algorithm, or data sets that I'm running through HPC batch workloads that I need to process and get to that real valuable information under the covers. And of course, Linux and Windows Server-based applications have been using file data for years to share log files, to share static content that may be delivered in the form of a website or dynamic working sets that multiple servers need to operate on and across in order to really get that application workload done. And what we see is increasingly customers are looking to move those applications to Azure, and they're relying on Azure Storage to house them. And there's a couple of reasons why. Data growth in the cloud is a much easier thing to handle. For those of you who have managed on-premises storage environments like myself, you know forecasting growth and capacity planning is a really difficult thing to do. There's always unpredicted applications and workloads that cause you to miss your forecast and have the need to order net new capacity ad hoc and really blow your budget out of the water. Cloud storage takes that off the table. There's capacity there when you need it, and you can actually see your bill down when you reclaim storage and deallocate storage. It's really an amazing thing that cloud brings to the table. And of course, all of these services, machine learning that you don't have to build, plug and play machine learning that you can use, leveraging the algorithms we've already written, is just one of the virtues, along with things like cloud scale analytics that are available when you move your workload to a public cloud and you move the files that these workloads need to operate to public cloud. There are inherent protections against ransomware that we'll talk about later. And of course, your storage costs can go down dramatically for paying for what you use and paying for the right tier and the right price performance for that data versus pre-buying capacity up front and then having a whole bunch of gear on your floor that you're not only paying for to leverage, but paying to power and cool, and really incurring costs that are unnecessary because you don't need that much capacity. So these are the types of things that we see customers doing with our storage platforms today. And they're also able to achieve some really great things that require a tremendous amount of difficult architecture decisions and high cost on premises, like high performance and scalability out of the box, uh, durability and availability across multiple sites and multiple different failure domains, and of course, inherent built-in data protection capabilities and high security out of the box that helps you protect your data both from disasters and from nefarious actors. And you're doing all of this on a unified platform. So the actual hands-on management of these environments is drastically simpler than logging into individual platforms and systems within a traditional environment. And we do offer all of the storage platforms that you need to meet any application workload demands. Block storage, akin to locally attached disk storage or SAN storage that we're used to using on premises. And that is comprised of our Azure Disk Storage portfolio with services like shared managed disks and disk pools. Our object storage is what's available to support those modern workloads, those cloud native workloads. And we provide not only a traditional object storage platform that's available via REST APIs, but also a data lake platform that can be accessed through HDFS protocols. And one thing that's a real unique value add of Azure with our object storage platform is you can also access that data simultaneously through REST APIs, modern protocols, and through the legacy NFS version 3 protocol, making it easier to port legacy applications to public cloud and benefit from the scale of our services. And finally, file storage. So for those of you who have more sophisticated NFS requirements, you require NFS v3 and v4, or simultaneous SMB and NFS protocol support, or just SMB protocol support, we have our Azure Files and our Azure native NetApp Files platforms, which offer you storage services that are native to public cloud without the need to manage underlying equipment and infrastructure, and also great hybrid capabilities like Azure File Sync, which allows edge caching of that files storage in the cloud. Let's talk a little bit further about each one of these services independently. So blob storage, again, is that storage built for modern applications, cloud native applications, REST API, NFS protocols, HDFS. It is scalable, durable, and available, meaning you can count on that storage to be there when you need it. And it is redundant across multiple physical platforms at varying degrees. You can protect yourself from individual component failures within one of our data centers, failure and unavailability of a data center, and failure and unavailability of a region. We offer multiple levels of resiliency. Secure by default. You have to begin opening up access. We lock everything down from the time you create an individual storage entity. Cost effective. You can move your data to the right tier within an individual account. And we offer comprehensive management in respect that everything is accessible through one interface and one CLI or PowerShell command set. Everything from creation to protection to securing to moving data between different tiers, all available in a comprehensive portfolio. And this is really built for the most demanding workloads from both a scale and a performance perspective. We are the only provider in the public cloud space that offers an SSD high performance tier of object storage. Azure Files, what does fully managed mean in that title? Well, the fantastic thing about Azure Files is you have native SMB protocol and NFS protocol compliant file storage, and none of the servers under the covers to manage. This is a cloud native service, easy to set up, easy to configure from a redundancy perspective, a data protection perspective, and supporting your applications without code changes. Fully compliant SMB 2, 3 protocol access and NFS4 access. Azure NetApp Files brings the best of NetApp to the public cloud. This is the highest performance NetApp solution in any public cloud. It performs at bare metal hardware speeds. It offers simultaneous SMB and NFS protocol support from one volume. It is incredibly easy to manage. I've spent a lot of time with NetApp equipment in the past and NetApp interfaces, and this is absolutely the easiest in an Azure native experience. You can be up and running. That says minutes. I'm going to say seconds. And it makes it simple for you to offer high performance storage for all of your most demanding applications in a few clicks and no time at all. And this is all built in conjunction, in tight partnership with our friends at NetApp, available as a native Azure service. And really, you can hear me talk about this until I'm blue in the face, but what really matters is what customers say. And you can see great examples here of customer testimonials for Azure Files, Azure NetApp Files, and Blob Storage. The scale, the feature set, the performance. This is why customers keep expanding their footprints in Azure and why you see the drastic and dramatic growth that we've had within our public cloud. Storage is absolutely a big part of that. A few more testimonials for some different use cases, everything from high performance compute to file shares that are attached to virtual desktops and virtual servers, and of course, SAP. We have more and more customers who are moving mission critical SAP environments to Azure. But really, one of the most difficult things that we find our customers often have when they're new to Azure is the decision point around which storage service to use for which use case. So we've put together some great documentation that I'm going to show you right now. And these URLs are available in the closing slide, and you'll have access to these after our session today. But to show you an example of what they look like, our blob and data lake storage services, we talk about the virtues here in this article and some use cases for each. We do the same in terms of helping customers determine whether Azure Files or Azure NetApp Files is the better service for their particular use case and application workload. There's a great breakdown and comparison of these two services, everything from availability to performance to granular capabilities. And then we've done the same thing for our NFS storage options, which include our cloud native, also REST API and HDFS protocol capable platform, Azure Blob Storage. So here's a great comparison to help you determine which may be the better option from an NFS v3 protocol support standpoint. Okay, we're going to come back and go into some other demos here in a little while, but I do want to switch gears now and talk about what we're going to focus on for the rest of our time together, and that is migrating your files to Azure to help accelerate those application workloads that can really benefit from public cloud services. So what we have done is on February 8th, we launched a new program, the Azure File Migration Program. We have two fantastic industry leaders that are participating and helping us bring this program to market and to you. Data Dynamics with their Storage X offering, and Comprise with their Elastic Data Migration offering. These two solutions are best of breed software packages that help you decide what to migrate and to where, and then actually perform that migration in an automated fashion. And we're going to talk about all of this in depth, but I do want to emphasize that these solutions are free. You simply go to the Azure Marketplace. The short URLs will take you to each of our partners' offers. You click Get It Now or Contact Me, and you are immediately able to begin leveraging their solutions to help you simplify your file migration. after a quick onboarding session to make sure you understand the best practices and you can get off on the right foot. So why are these tools necessary? Why don't we simply have customers use Robocopy or rsync or AZ copy to move content from S3 compliant sources or existing SMB shares or NFS exports? Well, these tools bring a level of automation that drastically simplifies the process. They help you monitor the activity on an ongoing basis. They're secure in that you fully own the data path from source to target, whether that source is on premises or another cloud location. They are highly performant. You can deploy one or multiple copy engines that can drastically increase the speed of the copy and get you up and running in Azure much faster. They audit and track and log everything. So for those of you who have high compliance requirements, you need to turn things over to auditors to show them what's been done. These tools do a fantastic job of showing the chain of custody. And I mentioned automation already. I'm going to emphasize that again. These are set and forget. Source, target, control my bandwidth utilization, and just let them do the job in the background. And then you intervene when it's time to cut over and finish that migration. And again, from a bandwidth perspective, they offer throttling. So you can make sure not to overrun your circuit during business hours because that scale out copy capability that they have is highly performant, and you may need to restrict bandwidth utilization during business hours. So a couple of guidelines around when you should and should not consider participating in this program. Well, when we look at the two different scenarios there, on-premises to Azure migrations or other cloud to Azure migrations, you really should only consider larger migration opportunities, whether you have one or multiple sites with tens of terabytes of data. These solutions are a good fit. They do require some learning. As I mentioned, the two participants will help train you to get you up and running quickly, but there is some learning. There is infrastructure to deploy. Those copy engines need to be deployed so you can actually perform the work. And you have to consider that. So that's why we typically recommend them for migrations of 50 terabytes or more. Obviously, you want to make sure this is tied to another migration project. You are only moving files because the application workload is coming along with it. Really, you want to try to co-locate those applications with the files. That's a best practice. And while they can use Azure Data Box as an offline baseline copy and then incremental over the wire, that is absolutely valid. We're finding that the customers who are happiest with these solutions, where they're working best, is when these migrations are over the wire, including that baseline copy, because it does occur in the background. You can just let it go, let it stream. Where not to use this program, where you shouldn't think about it. If your NAS or object storage contains backups and you want to move those backups to Azure, it's better to use the backup vendor that has written those backups to the existing disk platform. And really the reason for that is it simplifies the process of cataloging and updating. So if you need to execute or restore, the backup application knows where to find that data. Again, we talked about the lesser than 50 terabytes. I'm not going to beat a dead horse there, as the saying goes. And if your NAS, and we find this with enterprise class NFS NAS arrays, virtual machines, data lakes, and databases, relational databases can reside on NAS. That's very common. Modern NAS platforms are extremely performant. It's better to use other tools for those, with the asterisk noted there that if you do have an HDFS-based data lake, you could use these tools through the embedded NFS gateway to copy them, but there may be better solutions today, like our friends at WANdisco. Can be done, but do your research on that. So again, how do you take advantage of this? Well, it is self-service. We have a comparison of the two offerings, and I'll be showcasing that here in just a few minutes. You want to then go to the Azure Marketplace and select that ISV offer, After that, you will receive that onboarding, that training session, and the license to activate the software and get up and running. And that is zero cost. I cannot emphasize that enough. Zero cost to you. Now, I'm a big believer in showing you the look, the feel, the experience. So we're going to go back to my web browser and we're going to take a look at these two solutions firsthand. Okay, folks, let's take a look at these tools firsthand. We're going to look at both Data Dynamics Storage X and take a look at Comprise Elastic Data Migration. And it all starts in the Azure Marketplace. So you can see here I have the Data Dynamics offer listed. And this is the free offer. You can tell because it says offer sponsored by Azure. And when I click Get It Now, the Azure Marketplace is going to walk through the steps that I need to follow in order to deploy this software in my subscription and begin a migration. And what that's going to result in is you will have a VM that is used for command control of your migration activities. And I am using Azure Bastion to log into mine. So if you're not familiar with this tool, this is a great way to manage remote access to your VMs. And it does so without opening external ports. And I'm just using a browser-based remote desktop service in order to get in and actually manage this VM. So I started this session just a second ago. And we're looking now at a live view of the Storage X software. And I'm going to start here in the web interface, which shows the analytics capabilities, where I have set up an analysis job. That job is looking at a share that I have configured in my environment. And it's going to allow me to see some important details like we're looking at here, which is the age of files in my environment. So all of the files that I have in this particular share are at least 180 days old or older, between that and 365. So that helps me determine where exactly I should move, where I should migrate this content now that I know a little bit more about it. And there's a ton of different details I can get here, what file types are present on this system. We can see that I've got a number of different types here, a lot of PDFs, some PowerPoints. I've got an EPUB, a book file there, spreadsheets, et cetera, et cetera. So I can go through these reports. I can learn a lot about the data that I have, how old it is, how big it is, how much data is in a share, and again, help me tune my migration strategy. And then once I have that info and I'm ready to move forward, StorageX makes it really easy to do things like add a net new storage system in that I'm going to go ahead and set up migration jobs for. So you can see the different platforms that are supported here by StorageX, and I follow a simple wizard to add my credentials in and then go out and scan those shares or exports and set them up as sources for a migration activity. Once I have them discovered, like I have some NetApp ONTAP NFS exports and SMB shares here, when I decide that I want to migrate one of these exports or shares to Azure, I simply right-click, choose Migrate, and then this is going to allow me to select an existing policy that will move the data based on the parameters that I choose as part of that policy. And I'll show you one of those policies here in a second. But really simple, where am I migrating from? That's already pre-populated. Where am I migrating to? I'm going to take a look through the rest of my storage resources. You can see I have these grouped by NAS platforms in Azure, object storage in Azure, and then of course my on-premises sources. So let's send this off to an Azure NetApp Files instance from my on-premises NetApp clustered ONTAP system. And it'll have me walk through and discover the target export and those types of things. But I won't bore you with that during this demo. Instead, we'll take a look at one of those policies, which I promised I would do next. Here's one that I've created, and we're going to go ahead and look at the properties of this policy. I've got a friendly name attached to it, nothing real exciting there. Some general policies, general options that I can set, number of times to retry if a copy fails for some reason, like a file's open, for example. I can set up my schedule. How frequently do I want to run replication jobs to keep up with changing files? And then some really cool things like the filter, where based on that data we were looking at earlier in the reports, I can decide not to migrate content that hasn't been accessed in a period of time. In this case, nobody has touched that file in 2 years. Instead, I'm going to leave that on the current NetApp environment, and I'll set up a separate policy to then move that to object storage to save me a little money and not move files to expensive high performance storage when I don't need to. So really nice flexibility that you have here. And then some cool sophisticated capabilities like removing orphaned SIDs. So somebody has left the company, their credentials are no longer available in Active Directory. I don't want to transfer that bad file ownership during a migration. So instead, I can have that move to a new group like the administrators group. They can become the owners of that particular content. So really nice options here. Pretty easy to set up and running from that. Get it set up and running from that template in the marketplace. And then the Data Dynamics team will help you get onboarded and trained and ready to use this software. So that is Data Dynamics Storage X. Now, Comprise is going to be a little different experience. So it starts the same. You're going to look for that Comprise offer, the one that says sponsored by Azure in the marketplace. You're going to hit contact me, and the Comprise team will reach out. We'll get you that initial training that you need to become comfortable with the software, and we'll then give you the license and get you going. And you can see Steve over at Comprise has provided some really nice videos here that give you an example of how to do specific things with the software. They've got tons of documents here, and it's kind of a nice thing about the Azure Marketplace. There's a lot of info about the individual software solutions for each listing. And Comprise is, like I said, a little different experience. They have a SaaS-based solution. This is hosted in the Comprise cloud. You can see my instance here. So the command control is all over the internet. That is hosted by Comprise. And then what you will need to do to begin copying data is to download the images for their observers. And if you're copying SMB shares, the Windows proxy, and install these in your environment. And these are just downloadable OVFs, really easy to install, get up and running. And then you're able to register your sites, and that's something I really like here. Is this is a multi-site solution, so we can either look at Atlanta or one of the other sites individually, or get a view into all of my file and object environments across multiple sites. You can see here that Comprise has some really nice cost analysis. So you can put in your current costs for your file and object environment, your costs for your Azure storage, and then see exactly what your savings can be based on different scenarios. And those scenarios are all part of the planning component. So I can go in and modify different parameters after my shares or my object stores are scanned, like show me what it would look like to move this content to Azure and the archive tier of our blob storage if it hasn't been accessed in 6 months or longer. So I get a reflection of exactly what it will cost me to do some selective migration, migrate some of my data to Azure NetApp Files or Azure Files, and migrate the remainder of that data to blob storage. So really cool capabilities that Comprise brings to the table through their analysis and the planning component of the software. And it goes even a little bit further here, where I can look at things like, well, where do I have the bulk of my data stored? What type of data is out there. So I've got a lot of video content on this particular system, or these two shares, I should say, that I'm examining across a NetApp and an Isilon system. I can see how big those files are, how big or small, and then who are my big culprits. Who's consuming all my storage? Like whoever this is, best. Boy, they're using a whole lot of storage in the environment. I might need to dig into that. And then, of course, groups within my environment, AD groups. I can see who's the biggest consumers. I'm going to bet that our friend best is a member of the test team. But tons of different metrics and reports I can get back here on my environment. And then one other nice thing, you'll find a lot as you're looking to find the optimal performing solution for your particular use case. Knowing things like the average file size is oftentimes a great determiner of what's the best backend environment. For example, blob storage does really well with large files, so I may have a good candidate here to move to Azure Blob Storage, our object platform. Okay, let's take a look here. Oh, I almost forgot. I did want to highlight that you can see I have multiple observers deployed in Atlanta. And what you can do is deploy multiple observers and proxies, and it will speed up your copy as long as you still have headroom in your network pipe. You have enough network bandwidth. The comprised solution will effectively round robin the copy activities across those multiple observers and proxies to help you complete your copy operations in your migration faster. Can't believe I almost forgot to mention that. You can do the same thing with StorageX. You can deploy multiple universal data engines with StorageX and get that parallel copy activity. And you can see here, Comprise supports a number of different sources for you to pull data from. Here's the comprehensive list of all of the cloud-based and on-premises-based platforms that they have API-level integration for, so they perform efficient indexing and copy activities. You simply need to provide hostname, IP address, and then if you haven't provided credentials previously, that will pop up. So you can see here, if I put in Isilon, for example, hostname, IP address, and then a user password that's going to have access to the exports or shares that I want to go ahead and migrate. And then once you have your sources and you've added some targets, and targets are object storage accounts in Comprise parlance, you can then set up your migration jobs. So I've got two that are running and have been running here. I'm migrating a clustered ONTAP system to Azure NetApp files, migrating on-premises Windows file share to Azure files. I can get details on that, how much data has been copied, what's remaining, how many files, what was done in the last iteration, the last copy job that was run, and then some of the parameters that I've chosen. And setting up a new migration job is really, really easy. I'm going to go ahead and choose my source, and I can narrow that by protocols. In our case, yeah, let's do that. We're going to migrate an NFS environment. Actually, you know what? Nah, I'm going to migrate more from my Windows file server. So let's do that. I chose SMB. Now you can see only platforms that have SMB protocol enabled are displayed here. It filters out the NFS only environments. Where do I want to migrate that to is the next question. So let's send this to Azure Files, and we'll move to that docs share. I can migrate just a specific directory or set of directories if I want. I'm going to migrate the entire shares content. It lets us know a few things that Azure Files does not support today, so I'm aware of that before I kick off this migration. Given a name, docs on premises to Azure Files. And yes, I definitely want those ACLs to come over. I want to preserve the access time. Next. Okay, once again, reminds me of what's unsupported in my target environment, recaps what I've chosen, and we're going to hit Start Migration. And I will have a new entry in my table here, and it tells me it's doing the first baseline copy. So really cool, all of my migrations in one view, makes it super simple to go ahead and keep an eye on even a complex multi-site migration job. And then finally, I do want to highlight that there's additional value that Comprise brings to the table, which is not part of our program. So you can use Comprise as a consistent and continuous replication solution. That is a separate license that you will have to pay for. That's not part of the Azure Migration Program. and their deep analytics capabilities, which are not part of the program as well. That's an additional license. But both of those capabilities are really, really great for folks who have a large distributed environment or are going to be running in a hybrid scenario for a long period of time, or you've just got a lot of data in Azure that you want to manage more intelligently over its life cycle. Deep analytics is something that you may want to talk to Comprise about and just buy and use as a consistent part of your storage management strategy. It really helps you not only understand what you have holistically, but set up policies to manage your data over time in an intelligent fashion to help you get the best price performance blend over the life of your data. Okay, well, we took a brief look at both of these solutions. Let's go back to the slides and we'll wrap with a few more points. So let's talk further about best practices like that. So you know in your migration project, your engagement, how you can move forward with no risk and have happy users, highly performant applications, and have the best experience possible with moving your file estate to our Azure Storage services. So like we talked about previously, you want to make sure that you fully grasp and understand the performance capabilities, the feature set behind our storage services. We looked at this document and a few others. There are those URLs that I mentioned previously. Do the upfront research, read through these articles, and understand our storage services in depth so you know what is the right target destination for your application workload and the files that comprise it. Next, like I just mentioned, you want to take a look at the two tools and compare their capabilities. So compare migration tools, aka MS, compare migration tools, brings up what you see here and lets you look at the two side by side. They have been kind enough, both Data Dynamics and Comprise have done a great job creating videos that showcase their functionality and give you a deeper look than what you saw during my brief demo. And we've worked together with our partners to create getting started guides. And these not only review some Azure best practices, but best practices for their software and guidance on how to set them up that help support those onboarding sessions that you get when you engage with them. And of course, you want to make sure that when you are doing the actual deployment, it's done in an optimized manner. So understand how much bandwidth you have available. And those getting started guides mention several tools that can help you assess how much headroom you do have on your current circuits, if that is not something that you're already aware of. You want to work with these ISVs during the onboarding session to determine how many have deployed so that you know what the scale out need is and how many VMs will need to be allocated. And then, of course, as I mentioned, they both support throttling. So you can throttle the bandwidth if needed during business hours. And note my asterisk there. So if you deploy resources in Azure, like I did with StorageX, you will have to pay for those virtual machines. Those are billed separately and not included as part of the no-cost services that are part of our file migration program. Okay, so your next step, once you have them deployed, is to start that migration. And we looked at the migration workflow firsthand. We looked at the progress meters. You know, you want to make sure that you're monitoring this and you're timing the cutover with a planned outage in your environment. This should be something that runs through change control. You know, there will be a disruption, of course, as you are pointing an application to a new source of the files that it's leveraging. And one great thing that you can do here with these tools, with a migration workflow like this, is test before you migrate. So these shares or exports or object storage account that you'll be migrating to are available for read access. You can go ahead and mount them. You can check the files, make sure the permissions translated over, make sure that the files open up. And that's not something you really have to worry about because these two tools do CRC checksums and the things you need to make sure that the files arrive in the same form that they left during the copy process. But you can open them up, you can do testing. Even if you make changes, they'll just be overwritten during the next copy iteration. That will be recognized as a difference between the source and the target. And another best practice that I like to share with all the people that I have discussed migrations with over the last 20 years is leave that source intact until you've had the new instance, the Azure-based instance of the application up and running for some period of time. That is your insurance policy. You heard me mention this is a copy and paste, not a cut and paste. That's where this comes in really handy. You have the opportunity to make sure that everything worked exactly as you expected before you go ahead and perform that cutover and decommission the old equipment and get that out of your building. And one thing that I always hate to be the bearer of bad news on, but I feel it's my responsibility, is any cloud migration project, any moving of an application does not mean that you get to stop performing backups. So resources in public clouds still need to be backed up. You need to configure backups for your VMs, for your hosted databases, and also for your file environments. So Azure Blob Storage, Azure Files, and Azure NetApp Files all support built-in backup capabilities to make sure that you are able to recover from accidental or malicious deletions, or any activity that can disrupt your application's state. I've had file data corrupted by applications after a bad patch. Being able to revert to a prior known good is absolutely essential, and we give you that capability. So to wrap, we are asking you to do one thing. Go out, research these solutions, and engage with these partners. This is free for you to use. It can make your life easier. It can drastically accelerate your migration, and it can save you pain and suffering. If you have ever tried to perform a large-scale migration with a command line tool like RoboSync or RoboCopy or rsync, starting to trip over my words here, folks, sorry. You know how painful that can be at scale. It is very difficult to have to manually restart a process, to perform differencing, to look through log files to troubleshoot why a file is not copying. These tools make it easy. They are fully automated. They are set and forget. If one of the data movers goes offline or the command control interface goes offline, they pick right back up where they left off when those components are restarted, when those servers are restarted. They have surfacing of errors up to the top, so you don't have to comb through a log file. You know exactly how many errors, if any errors occurred, and what they are. They make your life drastically easier. So knowing that you have to move files, this is absolutely the best way to do it. Please engage with our two industry-leading partners in this space. And again, to recap, a whole bunch of resources that we've built for you, both in conjunction with our partners over on the left-hand side, and that we've built over time on our Azure native services on the right-hand side. You'll have all of these URLs available to you so you can read through these articles. I promise you this is not hours of research. It's not hours of reading. It's just going to make sure that you are really happy with the file storage solutions you have chosen in Azure. And with that, I have one last thing to say, at least as part of our scheduled program here, and that is thank you. I know how increasingly hard it is to take time out of your day to attend a session like this. We wanted to make this educational. I hope you learned something. I hope you're excited about engaging in the Azure File Migration Program. And we are now ready to take your questions. I look forward to seeing your questions and answering them. And thank you all very, very much for spending this time with me today. Let's get to the Q&A.
Thank you so much for joining us today. This does conclude the audio portion of our webinar. However, we will be live until the top of the hour to answer your questions. If you haven't already, please submit your questions into the Q&A window. Please note that the questions and answers are available every time you access your webinar console with the on-demand link. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you in an upcoming webinar soon. Have a great day.